Hi everyone, welcome back. Today is our second Edpuzzle video, and this one is on multi-step equations with variables on both sides. So in the first video, we did all equations with variables on one side. Now we're going to work if we have the same variable on both sides of the equation. So take a second to pause this video and make sure you title your notes and you date them, so you're writing these in your notebook, the one that is notes, and make sure you copy down these steps. You'll notice that the steps are very similar to yesterday's notes, except now we're adding add or subtract to get variables on one side, and then we're moving the constants. So take a second to pause this video and make sure you copy down the steps. Okay, now that you've copied down the steps, we're going to get to some examples here. Oops. Okay, so our first example, we have 6x plus 22 equals negative 3x plus 31. So just like yesterday, we're still looking, do we distribute? We don't have any parentheses, so we're not going to distribute at all here, and we don't have any fractions. So then I look, are there any like terms on the same side? Well, these two aren't like terms because one has an x and one doesn't. And these ones aren't like terms because one has an x and one doesn't. So we have to move all the way down to the fourth step here where it says add or subtract to get variables on one side. So I want to move this variable to this side. Well, how do I do that? I use inverse operations. I do the opposite of what it already is. We have a negative 3x, which is the same as subtracting 3x. So how do you get rid of a negative 3x? You cancel it out by adding 3x. But whatever you do to one side, you have to do to the other. So now we have 6x plus 3x is 9x. We still have our plus 22. And then on our right side here, negative 3x plus 3x just cancels out, and all we're left with is 31. Now we just have a two-step equation, pretty easy. Same steps as yesterday. Subtract 22. And divide by 9. So therefore, x is equal to 1. Which makes sense because if I plugged in 1 for x on both sides, 6 times 1 would be 6 plus 22 is 28, and then negative 3 times 1 is negative 3, plus 31 is also 28, so you know it is the correct answer. Okay, moving on to our second problem here. Now we have 64 minus 12 w, equals 6w. So now we don't have any distributing to do, we don't have any fractions to clear out, and there's no like terms on the same side, so I'm forced to try and get all of my variables to one side. Well, it would be nice if this variable was over here, because then I would just have a one-step equation. Well, how do I get rid of a negative 12 or a subtraction of 12w? You have to do the opposite, you add 12w. Whatever you do to one side, you have to do to the other. So make sure you're trying to line them up like this. It helps you organize it. If you're used to from middle school, like drawing a line down here, you can definitely keep doing that. So the negative 12w and the 12w cancel, so we have 64 equals 18w. So now I'm going to divide both sides to get rid of this multiplication here. And I'm going to do 64 divided by 18. So now you need to think, is 64 divisible by 18? So if you did that in the calculator, you'd end up getting 3.5 repeating. So 64 is not divisible by 18, but we can reduce that fraction. So how do we reduce 64 over 18? We need to think about what are some factors that they have in common. So one factor they have in common, they're both even numbers, so they're both divisible by 2. If we divide 64 by 2, we get 32. And if we divide 18 by 2, we get 9. Since 32 and 9 don't have any other factors in common, we are done. And you always just leave it as an improper fraction like that. Just make sure it's reduced. Okay, so 2 more problems here. On this problem right here, we see that we now have parentheses. Anytime you have this number outside the parentheses, you have to make sure you distribute that to everything that is inside the parentheses. I'm drawing these arrows to represent multiplication. So if I do 6 times 4, I have 24. And then if I do 6 times x, I have 6x. And then if I do the same thing on the right side, 2 times x is 2x, and 2 times -6 is -12. And now I'm basically at the same part I was in number 1. I need to get all the variables to one side. So how do I move positive 2x to the other side? I'm going to subtract 2x from both sides. So I have 24 still. 6 minus 2x, 6x minus 2x is positive 4x. 2x minus 2x cancels, and I'm just left with -12. Now I have a 2-step equation. I need to move 24 to the other side by subtracting it. So I have 4x equals -36. And if I divide both sides by 4, I get x is equal to -9. Okay, so now moving on to the next problem here. Last problem for today. I have -2 times 5x plus 3 equals -4x minus 8 times the quantity of 6 minus x. When I'm saying quantity, I just mean that I'm going to write it in parentheses, more than one thing. Okay, so taking a look at this problem right here, I see some distributing. That's always our first step. This definitely has to be distributed, and then I also have to distribute this -8 to those parentheses. I'm always keeping the sign that's to the left of the number with this number. So when I distribute on the left side here, -2 times 5x is -10x. -2 times 3 is -6. My -4x just gets dropped down. And now I have to distribute -8 times 6 is -48. And -8 times -x, and negative times a negative is a positive 8x. And now the next part here is I always look, do I have variables on the same side? Since I don't have fractions, do I have variables on the same side that are like terms? And on the left side I don't, but on the right side I do. Here and here. They're the exact same variable. So now if I just drop down the left side, my right side, if I combine -4x plus 8x, that's positive 4x. And now I'm at the same point that I was at in number 1. I need to move all my variables to one side and all my constants to the other. So I'm going to move positive 4x by subtracting it. You could have also added 10x to both sides. That would work too. -10x minus 4x is -14x. The 4x minus 4x canceled. And now it's a 2-step equation. Add 6 to both sides. And divide by -14. And -42 divided by -14 is positive 3. Okay, that is it for today's video.